Welcome to another session of Stelmo's Rants and Raves. I'm Stelmo. Let's just jump right in there. So, today I find out that we've once again stopped firing. And, I really, really, really am baffled and confused and a bunch of other words like that over what's going on in the Middle East. It makes zero sense to me. Now, let's go to Fox News today, and they have a picture there with a number of ships out at sea somewhere. As the assumption is they're waiting to transit the Strait of Hormuz, but they're it appears that only one of these is actually under power at the time, and the picture has the words "danger zone" on the bottom left-hand side of it. And here's the headline that goes with this: Massive oil tanker explosion reported in key oil route after hitting sea mine. So the key words there are hitting sea mine. So we probably won't do nothing. I know President Trump said for every a ship they hit, that he's going to hit a bridge or power plant, or, he's going to hit the things that are going to hurt the regular Iranian people. And actually, I find that despicable. I find, really, I find President Trump's actions in this whole thing inexplicable. You know, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I somehow, I don't even remember how now, but I stumbled across Tusi TV, and my art Tusi, and I hope I'm saying his first name right, uh, did a really good job. And let me say, he is Persian, and so he speaks the language, and he left Iran, I believe, when he was 14 with his mother. They fled, and his father still lives in Tehran, and he has other relatives there. So he's able to get a good grasp as to what exactly is happening. And I remember seeing when the protest started. And let's talk why were these protests starting? Well, the I believe that the actual reason is that the Trump administration, in the very beginning, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent put so many restrictive, say, covenants on the Iranian banks and other financial institutions to basically render them ineffective. And as a result of that, it caused massive inflation in Iran. Inflation so much worse than anything we've experienced. And that's what started the people taking to the streets. So it can be said, and it certainly historians, I believe, will write years down the road, that the United States caused the problem. And I actually support what they did there. The Iranian regime is a threat to the Western world. And so many people in the Western world recognize this, but so few of them are willing to actually do anything about it. And come on, just look at the history of World War One and World War Two. You know, people tend to be pacifists. They don't want to see war, and I get that. But unfortunately, it allows despots and other tyrants and the like to expand their powers and hurt. Again, it's not the big guys that are getting hurt. It's always the little guys. So anyway, and I don't remember exactly what date or anything this was, but certainly it was before the mainstream media picked up that anything was amiss in Iran. And so you had the people taken to the street, and Donald Trump came out and sent a message to them. He encouraged them to take more to the streets and to take back their government. And he said, if they start killing you, we're going to be there. And so I was able to see the size of the protest more than doubled overnight after Trump made these comments. Because people who normally would sit idly by and not want to get into the fray suddenly said, hey, we got the USA's backing. We're going out there. And it didn't take long before the Iranian regime, the despots that they are, started arresting people and executing them. And this is something that they've done forever. And, you know, I haven't even heard anyone talk about a number of other people that have been killed recently. The last I heard it was, you know, people were saying close to 50,000 people. And what does our president do? Has he been there for him? No, he hasn't been there. The most inexplicable thing, and I'm baffled by, is why he hasn't gotten small arms and weapons to the people. You know, again, when they reopened the internet in Iran, and I'm going to guess that was now a month and a half, maybe even 2 months ago, and people were able then to more readily transfer digital files. And at Tusi TV, again, he played clips of Iranians, and while they're talking about one thing, they're holding up paperwork saying, please send us weapons. We want to fight these people. And it wasn't like there was just one of these things. There were multiple. And so it becomes inexplicable. Now, I remember hearing that the U.S. was sending arms to the Kurds in northern Iran, and that they were going to distribute the weapons. But I'm not exactly sure what happened there other than the people never got weapons. So it would appear to me that Trump likes the administration that's in power in Iran. I know that makes no sense, but he wants to make a deal with them. And once again, you know, we have a ceasefire. You know, okay, it was a mine that this ship hit, but this is a problem. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. And I don't think it's going to open up anytime soon. And Trump's problem is they're negotiating, but they're not negotiating with the party that has the weapons. They're not negotiating with the IRGC. They're negotiating with the civilian government, thinking that the civilian government is going to more or less force the ones with the weapons to put them down. And that's not going to happen. It works the other way. The IRGC tells the civilian government what to do. And all of them are radical Muslims. And they believe the Quran to the extent that it says that they can lie to the infidel to further their cause. And President Trump has talked about how, you know, they enter into an agreement in less than 24 hours. Later, they're violating the agreement. There's never going to be a lasting peace in the Middle East as long as the IRGC is in power. And I'm completely baffled why the president doesn't want to see them taken out. Once Iran is out of the picture, and when I say they're out of the picture, I mean the IRGC, I mean these radical Muslims. It's only 4 to 5% of the population of Iran that is in this category. The vast majority of people in Iran want these people gone, and gone as soon as possible. And yet, for whatever reason, our president wants to string this thing out. He said he wasn't going to get us into any more endless wars. Well, this is becoming an endless war, Mr. President. What was supposed to be a couple weeks is now not even a couple months. It's far longer than that. And, you know, there are those who say that no president who is involved in a war during the midterms has lost them. They've always carried the midterms when the country's at war. And I'm saying, don't tell me he wants to string this out to the midterms because, see, I think he's going to be the exception to the norm. He made a promise not to do exactly what he's doing. And when you add all the other broken promises that Trump has done, there's third term. I just don't know how you can reconcile all of this. It's really hard. It's almost like impossible. But what I can say is, once again, we're in a, I don't know that they've called it a ceasefire. We've just stopped firing. And, yesterday, or perhaps it was the day before, I was watching a clip, and they were showing satellite imagery that showed a section in Iran after we had bombed it, and then showing that same section fairly recently. And what we were able to see in these photos is they totally rebuilt the everything that had been destroyed in this particular area. And they were commenting on how exceedingly fast the Iranians were able to rebuild. And so I guess the president wants to play this game. Let them rebuild, bomb them. Let them rebuild, bomb them. And it's costing us money we don't have. And therein lies the big problem. I don't know how that problem is ever going to be solved. Because we're broke. Nobody really wants to lend us money anymore. And those that do lend us money, they're only buying really short-term debt. Because they don't want to lock into any of our long-term debt because they're afraid of inflation. And inflation is much higher than the government says it is. Nobody believes any of these government numbers anymore. And, it's sad that this is happening during the Trump administration because at least in my lifetime, never has there been a president who has seemingly voiced his desire to change the negative things going on in this country and turn them around. And that's why he had such wide support. But I think here in his third term, he's starting to lose a lot of that support. Now, the big problem is those loony leftists on the left, none of them are viable alternatives to the Republicans. And so if this country is going to survive, and right now I have my doubts, but voters in each area are going to have to become much more involved in politics and much more learned. They need to find out exactly what's going on. All you have to do is look at all of this fraud that they uncovered. And this was all happening right in front of our elected officials who apparently, allegedly knew nothing about this. They're completely surprised. And you know what? I don't buy that. I think they had to know. I don't see how, when you start talking as many billions of dollars as are involved, how they didn't know. I think they were quiet because maybe they were getting some kickbacks too. Maybe that's why you have so many Republicans unwilling to vote on the Save America Act. You can't explain that. The vast majority of people in America, of both parties, think that everyone should have an identification card in order to vote. But the politicians don't want that. And the reason is now very explicitly clear, and that is they are corrupt. And it's sad. I don't know how this gets fixed. I'm not even sure it can be fixed. And we get mad at Generation Z and Generation Alpha because many of them are now supporting socialism. Well, you have to look at it in their eyes. Capitalism is not working. Many of these people buy um, the nonsense. They go to college and get degrees in things like ice cream tasting and riding merry-go-rounds and other such nonsense. And then, of course, they cry when they can't find a job in their field when they graduate. But even those who can find a job, they just are having the hardest time paying off their voluminous student debt. And so right now there are billions of dollars of borrowers who are in default status. And in some ways you have to feel sorry for them. You know, they were going to school to allegedly get an education, and they were just led down the wrong path. And now they're all paying the price for it. And because of our debt, our economy is slowing down. And it's going to continue to slow down. And it's actually going to start shrinking. Now, of course, they'll probably tell us it's growing at some huge level and whatever other nonsense that they put out. But anybody who believes government numbers today is, in my opinion, just not wrapped too tight. Because we have far too many instances of illustrating how these numbers are false. And the big one that's false, that gets very few people talking about, is inflation. Yeah, people talk about inflation and the fact that at the levels the government is alleging is problematic for all of these people. But it's actually even more problematic because the inflation is greater and it's diminishing their spending power. And yes, I get it that every month retail sales are showing an increase in dollar amount. But while the dollar amount may in fact be going up, what isn't going up is the amount of things that people are able to purchase with those dollars. So they're spending more and bringing home less. And everything that they have to have is going up on them. The price of cars, where I saw where they're saying now that people are coming in and they're underwater on their cars when they trade them in. So they're getting a new loan on a new car and they're including in past debt and they're going to be paying all interest on all that past debt. These people are also in a doom loop. It cannot continue. The price of cars is too high for the average worker. I saw where they're saying now the average car payment for people is over $1,000. I don't know how young people get a start out in this world. And again, I hear all of the things about how many of them are living at home. Of course, they can't afford. Here in Florida, a one-bedroom apartment is, if you're lucky, you're going to find one for around $2,000 a month. So add $1,000 car payment, add a couple $100 for your insurance every month, and when you're adding gas, food, and all the other stuff, where do people get all of this money when they're young and just starting out? They don't. And that's the problem. And the problem is getting worse, and none of our politicians are addressing any of these problems. All they're continuing to do is to spend like drunken sailors. The level of our spending right now is beyond the pale. And I don't know how it's going to end. I really don't. But I keep saying one thing, and I want to finish up repeating myself again. Mr. President, you need to end the war. And I don't mean end the war by some crazy agreement that's not going to last 24 hours. You need to go in and take them out. You need to stop telling us how bad you decimated their military, when we can see and read about all of these ships still being taken out. And so the problems that are being created by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz are only magnifying, and they're going to progressively get worse. But we have to deal with it as best we can. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a good day. Stay safe. It's a crazy world out there. It gets crazier by the day, but we got to deal with it. Thanks a lot. And if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to put them down below. I know I'm really remiss at asking people to post any questions they might have. But I got to it this time. And with that, have a great day. Stay safe. Bye-bye.